So I realized at that early age, you have to own who you are because there's going to be noise and there's going to always be someone that's going to come and mock you or not agree with you.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hello and welcome back to Pillars of Wealth Creation. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Excited to have Trixy Castro. Trixy, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I am doing well and excited to have you on the show. So Trixy is the founder of TRX Capital. She's passionate about empowering individuals, women especially, to excel in their business and entrepreneurial pursuits. And quite the career over the past 2 decades. Trixy has founded and invested in over 50 companies across diverse industries, and just a lot of experience in that. So first generation American self-made entrepreneur, founded, invested over 50 companies, like I said, former founder and CEO of Genesis Capital, which was acquired by Goldman Sachs, another company, Hudson and Marshall, acquired by Fidelity National. Man, just a ton of experience. So Trixy, welcome to the show. Really appreciate it. Anything else our listeners should know about your background?
I'm a glutton for punishment, clearly. No, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and really excited about it.
Yeah, well, there you go. So a glutton for punishment. So
Mhm.
take me through a little bit of your business journey, what you mean by that, because obviously we've got all kinds of different entrepreneurs here on this show, people that have been doing it for many, many years and people that are just kind of starting. So, um, what's that mean? Glutton for punishment.
So I say it in jest, but it's really such a part of who I am, and I love it. I truly enjoy solving problems, building companies, and started my first company at 14 years old. It was called Trixie's Tutor Time, and it came as of necessity, right? So I had made 2 sports teams. Each team was like $1,000 or something that you had to
Mhm.
pay, and I didn't want to be a burden or stress my parents out. So it was like, how do I go earn it? And quickly realized that, where there's a will, there's a way. And I went to the local elementary school across the street from my home where my younger sisters attended, and had the good fortune to have the principal kind of pay it forward, introduce me to the teachers. And within 1 month, I was making more cash than both of my parents combined. So I realized, okay, this is interesting. Like I have to figure out how money works. And so I walked into a Wells Fargo branch, which is kind of interesting because through the story, you'll hear how Wells Fargo kind of comes back full circle. But and said, hey, listen, I really want to understand how money works, how finance works. Can you give me a job? And they were probably like, who is this girl? And her name is Trixie. And I said, please give me a job. I became a teller. I was probably the world's worst teller because I would just, keep talking to the clients. But I had this like thirst for knowledge of understanding, how are you making your money? What are you doing? I'd look at the larger depositors to try and understand their models. And I realized that they were primarily in 3 categories at that time. It was the real estate groups, the tech groups, and the gamblers. So I was like, all right, well, gambling's probably not in the cards for me. The tech was still very new, so real estate it was, and really wanted to understand what they were doing at the time. They were going to the courthouse steps with wads of cashier's checks and purchasing these distressed foreclosed homes,
Hmm.
fixing them up and selling them. This was like pre-reality TV shows, right? And so if you can imagine, as I'm growing up and kind of growing and understanding the business, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking like, my goodness, there's a huge opportunity to create a real true leverage partner, right? A debt partner that can help these groups scale and can work alongside them. And so really looked at it from the perspective of, yes, it's very asset based, but also the borrower, right? Like the person is the business. And so when the chips are down and when the challenges come, which we know in business, that is always the case, right? Who
Yep.
are you going to hitch your wagon to? And is that person qualified? Does that person have that passion, the drive, right? To be able to roll up their sleeves and get in there and do it. And I learned so much, and it was so great. It was an amazing experience. I learned also that raising money was very hard. And you had to become, the expert in your trade, so to speak. And so and I realized like, okay, raising money to start my own bank is going to take a minute, right? And so while I do that, I also want to put together an online auction company where I can sell all the distressed real estate. So on one side of the house, my clients are the banks and servicers, Fannie, Freddie, HUD, right? All these different large groups, really helping them understand this is what you have on your books, right? Here's the value. Get the reserve price, create an environment where I provide all of the data and information necessary so that anyone can be a real estate investor. So that was one side. On the other side, I was providing the leverage facilities and loans to these groups, whether it was short-term financing. That model later grew and scaled to larger, different types of products, but all what we would consider B2B. So that's really the genesis of Genesis,
Wow.
right? And it was, so long ago, and I was so young with stars in my eyes that at that point you're like, well, I don't have anything to lose. So you don't even think about it, right? Like I think back to then and I'm like, how do we capture that fearlessness when you're young, right, in a bottle? And how do we hold on to that? And so have spent many, many years trying to create housing, create regional job creations for different groups and different areas all throughout the country. Housing is very important. And I've really taken an interest in other entrepreneurs and in their businesses and their passions and how we can apply good business practices across, all platforms. So it's been a lot of fun, but building my own company, having the blood, sweat, and tears, having the challenges, right? Having the challenges from being the originator, the processor, the underwriter, the receptionist, you name it, business
Yeah.
development, all of it, really understanding, okay, now to scale that, what does that look like? And trying to go and create access for myself to people that were smarter in the room, so to speak, right? Like, how can I learn that? How can I really tap into the things that they've done right? The things that if they had it to do over again, right, they might guide me on. And so really learned a lot, trial and error, right? A lot of like this and really wanting to say, okay, how do we make this in a very efficient way, right? How do we take these good business practices, scale them? How do we institutionalize this and make it, instead of a very wild, wild west type of industry, how do we make it a thing, an asset class? And so, went after, the big Wall Street money and institutional money, and people thought I was crazy. And I'm like, okay, I've heard that a time or two. Learned very quickly to filter out the noise and to set my eyes on the prize and to build a great team, right? A team where you're transparent and they understand from the leader's perspective, but also from the market conditions, right? Like, what is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish, and how they can be a part of that? So, really, my team has been incredible. We've worked together many, many years. And it's been a great run, and had the good fortune to scale these companies. Oak Tree out of downtown California was the first to really give the industry a shot and give myself a shot in my company. And we took that and scaled it and, put crazy numbers on the board, right? Something that started with a phone and a desk. Many years ago, it was a phone and a desk, smaller than, like a child's desk, if you will. And that turned into a company we sold to Goldman Sachs. So it was
Wow.
really cool. And
That's
9 months
cool.
prior to that, 9 months prior to that, sold the auction company to Fidelity. So that's a whole nother podcast of, selling two companies in nine
Yeah, no
months and
kidding.
how to go through that. And, and I'm so grateful for those experiences, right? And the heartaches of it and the joys of it, and, hope to be able to pass that information on to others.
It's a journey, it sounds like, of finding problems that existed and creating the solutions to those problems. Is that, I
Mhm.
mean, that feels like everything you said there. You're just like, there was just some issues that you thought you could tackle and find the solutions for them.
Right. Absolutely. And I think necessity shows you, right, to look closely into issues. And I think that when you look at a challenge and you sit back and you think, okay, I'm going to make the assumption if I have this challenge, others do too. How can I create this a solution for myself, but for others? All of a sudden you look back and you're like, my goodness, there's a business, right? There's a line of a revenue
Yeah.
opportunity, and really kind of placing that and I think so much of it, at least for me, was mindset, taking the fear out of it and looking at it objectively and looking at it as dollars and cents, right?
Mm,
How can we monetize this? How can we turn this into something that is revenue producing versus this big, giant, scary thing?
yeah. Yeah. That's a roadblock, right? That a lot of people will look at it as this big, giant, scary thing. And it can be if you don't look at it as break it down a little bit, make it easier. It's just business is not that hard. It is if you just put it all together and you go and you look at big company that's got it all. Like if you're looking at your company when you sold it, it's probably it's overwhelming, right? For somebody new beginning. But how you started it, like you said, it's just a little desk, like a little room, one phone, like there was nothing to it.
Yep.
Not that there was nothing to it, but
No,
it was
it
just
was less than, it was even less than that. I mean, to give you an example, my brother used to have to come walk me to my car every Friday because I'd get robbed by a homeless like guy. So I mean, it was like these were my challenges and
mm,
you learn from them. And you really do because you end up really being so in it that there is no other way other than to figure it out.
yeah. How do you keep you mentioned that before, like how do you keep that drive going? That when you're beginning, you don't have a family. Did you have a family you didn't have a
No,
family at
I
the start,
started,
right?
yeah, I
Started
started
so
when I was in
young.
college.
Yeah. So you don't have a family. Yeah, nothing to lose. Like, but then you start getting things. You started building a business and all of a sudden you start seeing some success and then you maybe have a family and now you're like, how do you keep that drive going that got you where you are right now? Or do you not? Is there, you know, do you look at it differently? Or like, what's your thought there?
I would say it's even more because now it's like I've been granted this incredible little box of tools, if you will, right? That
Mm,
I've developed through the years, learned from the years, borrowed from the years, whatever. And now I can share that with other entrepreneurs,
mm,
right? So, whatever stage they're at, I've been through there. I have the battle wounds, right? I have the arrows in my back. I have that, but now it's something where I can say, hey, listen, I've been through it. I understand. And here's how I navigated it, good or bad, but this is what I did. And here's what might be helpful. That's so fulfilling, right? So when I look at it, I have to take a step back, or I want to do everything for everyone. And I realize I can't, right? And I have two young kids but I think so much of it was writing it out. I know that sounds so basic, but I tell people all the time, write out what it is that you're trying to accomplish. What is the goal? And share that with the others. Share it with your people, your tribe, whatever that looks like, and then work backwards because otherwise this thing becomes so overwhelming and so scary. But when you break it down, you're able to then say, okay, this helps me accomplish that. This is part of the mission, right? This gets me from A to B to C. And if it doesn't, you're able to move it over here. But there's something about that process that is so energizing because this is the goal, right? And so
mm.
for me,
Yeah.
it was never the economics. Like
Yeah.
I realized really early on that that's all great and dandy, but that's just this giant game we have to play. And that's how you keep score. So
Yeah.
that's how you win the game, so to speak, right? So, okay, so that was like, yeah, that's interesting. That's motivating. That's going to take some chips off the table. Great. But that wasn't the like driver of every day get up and do it and do it. And that it was so much more, right? It was being able to create a path and break these glass ceilings and be a role model to others. And, being the only woman oftentimes in the room,
Yeah.
that was
For
fine
sure.
with me. And it was, oh, and your name is Trixie, and on paper, you don't fit the role. And I'm like, I get it, I get it, I get it. I'm not you, or I'm not this, but that's okay, right? Like that's what this incredible country is built off of. And having that entrepreneurial spirit and being able to say to the next person, listen, your idea is really good, or your idea is great, but we need to tweak it here a little bit. All of those things can change people's lives. And so I know for me, as being so young when I came into it, there was the good and the bad. You're so young coming into it, you don't know anything, right? But you also are fearless in a way because you haven't been jaded, right? You
Yeah.
haven't been told all
Yeah.
the no's and put that into your head. So
And you
I
don't
think
care about the nose at that age. I just,
no, you really don't, because you're like, whatever, it's a
yeah.
you problem, not a me problem, right? And so I think that as we grow up, right, you start to let these exterior voices and noise get in your head, And that's what I tell people all the time, like block that out, but identify what it is that you're going. Otherwise, you're kind of a leaf in the wind, just getting tossed around by situations
Yeah.
and circumstance.
Yeah. There is a beautiful thing about youthness. Like you don't have a reputation yet to get like, so you don't care about that. People don't expect a lot from you. So it's like, I'm just going to prove it.
Right.
There's just like I don't know, a youthful, maybe ignorance or whatever you want to call it. That is like, yeah, whatever, we're
Yeah.
just going to go do it. And I love that. Um, what's your, like, if you were to say, what's that one skill? What's the thing? What's your Midas touch?
I think just being tenacious, right? Having that grit of like, I'm going to figure out a way, right? Like 14-year-old Trixie had a win. Someone paid it forward and said, yes, I agree with what you're trying to do. Let me introduce you to these teachers. I don't know how it would have been different in my life had I not had that win, right? Because I come in and I'm like, wow, I can do it, right? No one can take that away from me. Let me couple that with education and data and go build something, right? And I think that holding on to those wins is so important because you tap into that tenacity and that grit because people don't tell you about the challenges in business and the
Mm.
scary nights and the obsessiveness that you have to be successful, right? And
Right.
like they tell you about like the end game and you're like, okay, that's all great, but how do I get from here to here? And all of those things, that grit is how you get there. At least that's for my case.
I'm assuming that you've had similar experiences to me and to most people that I talk to, is that you had plenty of times in your business journey where you just weren't sure how you're going to make it to the next
Mhm,
day,
mhm,
the next
mhm.
hour. Like, I don't know if this business is going to last any longer.
Yep.
Did you experience that?
Oh, time and time
Yeah.
again. Like to where I became a pro at it, right? I mean, there was one time we had our online auction, okay, and we've like been this is like Super Bowl for us, right? And we had prepped and we're good and da 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 da, and we did all the things, and the site crashes, and I'm
Mhm.
like, "Ugh," and like couldn't have been worse time. Just, I mean, it wasn't even like I could pretend it was. It was just like a go
Yeah.
in, go to the bathroom, throw up, come right back out. Like nobody knows. And like we still did it. It was one of our best auctions ever. We did it old school on the phone. Like we did what it had to, but like you couldn't just stay there, right? It
Yeah.
was like, okay, I'm a human being. I'm going to acknowledge that like feeling and I'm going to go figure it out. But so many times, so many times. And
Yeah.
some of the times they were my mistakes where like I looked back and I was like, my goodness, had I not been going so fast, I could have caught on to that or I
Mm.
could have picked it up faster. Or had I, just taken the time to, really read the person versus what I'm hearing them say to me, right? Those types of things. But really kind of reflecting back, I was able to at least sometimes start to catch it sooner. But yes, the sky is falling feeling is normal for all of us. And it's literally like, you learn to kind of learn and quiet it down a little bit. But yes, it was many times, many sleepless nights, many times where you're like, how am I going to make that payroll?
Yeah.
How am I going
Yeah.
to advance, whatever. And it was, yeah, it was definitely some interesting times for sure.
I'm sure it was I mean, it sounds like an amazing journey, but like you said, most people hear about the good. They don't they don't talk about the bad as much as they talk about the good, which, rightly so. I mean, as an entrepreneur, I think if you're successful, you're optimistic, right?
Mhm.
And you're positive. And so you're not dwelling upon the negativity. You're hopefully learning from it, but you're not dwelling upon it. So TRX Capital, what do you explain that company, what you're doing right now?
So I'm a lender at heart, right? That's how I started. Sold my company, waited out the non-compete, put together like the bigger, bigger, faster, right? Company where it's private lending. I go ahead and it's throughout the country, all sorts of products, right? So whether somebody wants to come in and they want to have a rental portfolio or they want to have a rental property or a fix and flip or a ground up, all of it, we're able to do. So
Hmm.
it's been a lot of fun because oftentimes I didn't want to feel like I could only help a certain type of loan product for my clients. Apparently, I must have abandonment issues because I never wanted my clients to leave. So I'm like, no, 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 no. I have to be able to do all things real estate for you.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, you mentioned it a few times, you're a woman in business, you're just not traditional. Your name is Trixie, like, you know,
Yep.
talk about being a woman in business and overcoming those challenges. I think that speaks to women. It speaks to everybody overcoming challenges, but talk about
Yeah.
being a woman in business and overcoming those challenges.
So I think it goes back to just being different, right? Being unique. And
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. When I was, I don't know, first or second grade, I go to my dad who was struggling even to learn the English language, let alone what the name Trixie means, right? And I said, "Why did you name me Trixie? Why didn't you give me a name that everybody knows, right?" And at the time there was a cereal, Tricks are for kids, and all these different things, and it didn't bother me. I just was curious. And he said, Trixie, you make a name. You are your name. And
Mm,
I thought, you know what? That is so true.
mm.
So I realized at that early age, you have to own who you are because there's going to be noise and there's going to always be someone that's going to come and mock you or not agree with you. But
So
that
true.
simple life lesson carried me through the boardrooms where it was, okay, go get the water. And I'm like, absolutely, I will serve you water, coffee, tea, sandwiches, whatever you want. But I'm actually here to get a loan done or deal closed or whatever, right? Like I'm here, I'm meeting with you. And I was okay being okay, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because anytime you're different or anytime you're innovative, right? You're always going to hear the negative. It's not like people are like championing for you, right? At the end, they're like, ooh, popping bottles and boats and trips and all of that. Yeah, that's great. But to get there, they're not telling you, hey, I knew you were a winner. Absolutely not. They're living in their own negativity, trying to tell you how you're wrong. And I looked at it at
So
that
true.
moment and I thought, well, gee, this is amazing. I changed my mindset and I thought, this is incredible. They're giving me all my objections right off the bat. So if I can just hear what they're saying, forget their thing, right? Let me hear what they're saying. I can be better for the next meeting. And I think that taught me how to be resilient and be okay being myself. And once I could do that, then it just kind of became a thing that was a norm, right? So then it didn't matter if I was a woman, a minority, none of it mattered. It was pick a day and pick an excuse why you want to essentially tell someone they're different and that's wrong, right? Okay, fine. But everyone still speaks the language of money. So let me show you how I can do that, right? And so
Mm.
it became less about that and more about how we can work together and understanding what their goal was, right? And I quickly was able to pivot because instead of having that moment that was familiar from first grade where the kids are like, hey, tricks are for kids, right? Really being like, absolutely they are. That's a great cereal. I love it, right? My name is this. And I was able to really understand that it was the same principles in business, right? Because what's going to happen to the young woman or the young man that maybe is not feeling themselves at that moment or being told, or who knows where they come from? I was the housekeeper's kid. Okay. I
Mm.
grew up in the home where my parents and I lived because my mother took care of this elderly lady and her home. I did not realize that that was a negative thing or a challenge. Are you kidding? I looked at it and thought, oh my God, this house is amazing. These people are so nice to me. I grew up there till I was 14 years old. Then we got our own home. So it
Wow.
was like, great, this is amazing. What did they do as Italian immigrants to get this house? And how do I do that? Right. So it was really just who are you going to let impact how you feel about you?
Yeah. You've got such a positive attitude. I love the positivity, and everything you're talking about is, it's all about the tenacity that you already said, and it's the positivity. You're taking what could be what a lot of people will use as a negative situation and just saying, you know what, I'm not going to let that define me, right? And
At
I'm going to
all.
use it.
Because yeah, they're not paying your bills, right? You're paying your bills. So until they're coming and paying your bills, it's just noise.
Just noise. Yeah. What's a mistake that you've made in business, and how can you pass down a lesson to our listeners?
Mm. Okay, so there's so many, right? But I think the fundamental, when I peel back the onion, the fundamental root is when I didn't and I haven't trusted my gut, whether it
Mm.
was with a person, right? And taking that great thing that is this positive desire and wanting to see the best in people, that doesn't always translate that they want to be their best, right? They may just be in that moment telling me something, and I so badly want them to win because I
Yeah.
know what it takes to win, right? And how much blood, sweat, and tears. But that doesn't always translate. And you always get these, like, what I call little spidey senses. And when I haven't listened to them and I've let the outside noise get to me, and it can look different, right? I remember a time where it was a really great, large private equity group. And I'm like, God, these are the smartest people I've ever met. If they're telling me to make this hire, okay, they must know because they went to business school and they do this, and this, and they must know, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't translate into I'm the boots on the ground
Yeah.
operator that's in it every day. So every single time, for whatever the reason was, whether it was I felt insecure at that moment of like, well, they must know kind of mentality, or the person sold me on what I wanted to hear, so to speak. Every single time I didn't take a second and really like take a step back. What's my gut? That's when I made the mistake. And it was really like detrimental to me because I take it so personal, like every entrepreneur. So you're almost forced to go back and reflect and say, okay, all right, of these 10 things, right? I did these three, let's call it wrong. I should have handled it differently. So I'll know for next time. But why did I do those things incorrectly, right? What's the
Yeah.
common
That's a good question.
denominator, and really reflecting. It's not like I was like going and talking to someone about it. It was really reflecting and saying, okay, how can I now make sure that's not a blind spot for me?
Yeah.
And then going and finding the right people to help build upon that, right? And so having, being able to ask for help is a big one too. And not getting stuck there, right? So I tell entrepreneurs all the time, we are so hard on ourselves, whether we're women, men, doesn't matter. We spin 10 plates and we're like, yes, we are king or queen of spinning these plates. And there's so many plates. And oh my God, two fell and like our world is over. And it's like, wait a second. First of all, two things. Maybe you shouldn't have, maybe those weren't the two correct plates to be spinning. Maybe you've outgrown it. Okay, let's start there. And second of all, how about we focus on you were spinning 8 plates? That's pretty incredible,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
we have to allow ourselves a little bit of just a moment of grace, right? Like
Yeah.
it's okay. It's like it's not the whole world is not going to feel it as intensely as we do, right? Like our kids, we may have had a horrible experience with a dog biting us or something. They've never had that, so it doesn't translate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy to beat yourself up when things go wrong. But that's never the right answer because you can't take back what you've done, right? You
Right.
can't take back how it went. And so there's only one way to do it is to move forward with it and to learn from what you did. Well, I guess there's two ways. The other way is just to give up, which is not a good answer for anybody. So um this has been great. I really love your energy and your attitude and just like I said, the positivity. Couple questions I want to wrap up with. One is, what's a favorite book that you can pass down to our listeners?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. There's it depends on where you are in your business, but I think you start with like the psychology of money is such a good one, right? Really understanding money and what that translates to you. Because as business people, we have to be okay with the concept of making money. And oftentimes there's so many different connotations that come with that, right? Almost like you're supposed to just want to by default make some. No, you're in a business, right, to make money. So I think understanding the psychology of money and your relationship with money is a really good foundational point. Then from there, you can add on and scaling businesses, and there's incredible books. But I tell people, like, let's just get the basics right.
Yeah.
Let's like, we are the business. So we
Yeah.
should be able to invest in ourselves. And usually our relationship with money is tied to our families, our parents, our whatever, our experiences. And it doesn't always mean it's the most effective for where we're trying to go.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, what what does it take to be a good leader? Like you've led several companies that have done amazing and you're continuing to lead companies. What does it take to be a good leader?
So I think to be a good leader, you have to be transparent with your people. with your team, with your clients, with your capital stack, with your investors, with everybody, giving them the opportunity to get to know you as a human being and taking the time to get to know them as a human being. What is their why? What motivates them? What challenges are going through right at that moment. Doesn't mean you have to fix it for them, but being aware of them, right? And understanding that people have this incredible desire to do well, and to do well with what they're working on, whatever their work product is, whatever their line of business is. Those things matter. They go home and they obsess about it, and they beat themselves up about it, right? So if we give ourselves the opportunity to be a transparent and real leader, you're able to establish connections with people and help them accomplish and fulfill their goals, because they're helping you fulfill yours, right? So you're building this business that is your vision, not just making them a part of it. That's incredible and amazing and a great leadership skill and quality and trait to have, but giving them the opportunity to know you as a human being, and you taking the time to get to know them as a human being, and creating that transparent alignment is critical in any leadership. At least to me, it's been that way.
I've actually never heard that said like that. So thank you for that. Last question. What are your 3 pillars of wealth creation?
So it's interesting, right? Like when you think about that, you have your basics that everyone talks about, right? And you've got the finance, and you've got all of the different pieces, but I'm going to take it and say that your foundation is really you, right? And so I tell people all the time, take the time to invest in you. You are the best investment. You are the business. The rest are going to be pillars that you as a business owner and as the individual put into place, right? And as you grow and as you build different companies and different homes, those pillars might look different at different stages in your life, right? It might be, money here, finance, tax. It'll be a various different, it'll be a different pot, melting pot. But if you start with yourself, truly understanding, okay, I'm not going to buy into this idea and notion that like I come last. Doesn't mean that, you're sitting out, on the beach all day, although that's fine too. If that's the point you're in your life, but really investing in yourself and realizing that you are that foundation. Then you put the pillars on top of the foundation, right? And those are going to look different as you go through your career and as you go through your life, as you grow a family, as you grow a team. And so it's kind of insert pillar here as you continue to grow, making sure that that foundation is really you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you said that, because as you grow and as you continue in your career, my pillars of wealth creation, like what's been important to me, always evolves and always changes. And it's like, if it should, quite frankly, if you're growing, it should happen. If you're improving, it should happen. So, Trixy, look, really appreciate it. Appreciate the time. How can our listeners get in touch with you, learn more about what you got going on, learn more about TRX?
Well, I have been behind the scenes for all these years building companies, right? Doing this. So just getting forward facing. So I'm working on it, but they can reach me on my website, trixycastro.com. I'm new to social media, literally just getting on it, but they can absolutely follow what we're doing. What TRX is doing, businesses that I'm investing in, connections that we're making for others. And they definitely can reach me there.
Awesome. Again, Trixy, really appreciate you, and you have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thanks, you as well. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out, and we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.